interesting that I think of all branding as emotional, it's kind of my favorite topic. So hopefully I won't bore everybody in the next hour when I talk about it. But I have two key roles. I work as the strategy director of Equus Design, and I also work I have my own business, which is called Brandcourage. So I'm the MD of that. So, I'm kind of in two places always at the same time, but they lead me to the same kind of thing, which is really that I have a very kind of overview perspective of how emotional branding can add value to businesses, and I don't know if you before you were talking a little bit about what we were going to do. You mentioned the fact that for me, when I look at Indonesia, there's a huge gap there in an understanding of what this is, and that means that really for those people that kind of become early adopters of using the emotional side of branding, that can create you a huge opportunity. You only have to look at what the international brands do, and you can see how successful they are at building leadership, and building differentiation by the fact that they really understand what goes on in the sloppy wet stuff between people's ears. I believe you spoke to Andrew Thomas, who is our managing partner, and also Wira, who is heading up strategy in Indonesia. Both of those are very incredible people to work with. I really enjoy that kind of relationship where you learn off other people, and there's always that experience that you get from doing fresh projects and seeing new things. So maybe they were saving the best for last. I don't know. I doubt it. But I kind of so nervous. Maybe they can kind of they set the bar very, very high. So I'm going to have to do very well. Another thing that I would like to mention is, to me, my kind of personal kind of mantra. And I think when you do whatever you do, and in your case you call yourself Higherpurpose, so I find that very interesting. That's what I would believe when I read that name. For me, my kind of mantra is that fortune favours the brave, and I was using this a lot before John Wick. I don't know if you know that movie.
I know.
Yeah, you know that, and he has it all tattooed on his back, right? He has it tattooed in Latin. It says "Futurus Futura ad." And it means the same thing. But I was using it before him. The point being that I think that especially in these times of COVID-19, and this is probably my how do you survive? And brand is a fantastic tool, and people sometimes in Indonesia, I'm saying specifically, there's a lot of opportunity there for you to build upon.
Yeah.
Okay. So does that kind of explain me a little bit?
Totally.
Okay.
So much for really introduce about who you are. And,
cool.
Like you said, I think. Oops, sorry about that. Two of your colleagues has done really great in the last season of EQ's team, but I believe that we are saving the best for the last. So apparently, like you said, some of the Indonesian brand owners still somehow undervalue these emotional benefits that they are actually approaching, and somehow I think it affects on their brand positioning as well, because more they will remain heavily into their USP, and some of the USPs might not include any emotional aspects to it. And like just now you said that and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So especially I think feeling or emotions are connected. So in this new vernacular, it creates the first mover opportunity for those who are willing to actually innovate and how to fuel first beginning. And maybe can you try to explain to us like what's the definition about emotional branding?
Okay. So as I said before, it's kind of interesting that I believe that all branding is emotional. So when you talk about people talking about USPs as being very rational, what they're doing is focusing on what I call the what's of their business. And everybody has infrastructure, they have people, they have products, they have services. Everybody has this. Unfortunately, what happens is if you're in that vernacular and you talk about else does the same. So when we start to build something more emotional, then we're going to step more into who and to why. And for me, maybe my starting point is long-term strategy for the protection and exploitation of intangible assets for commercial gain, which sounds very, very technical. And I promise you, I won't do a lot of technical stuff. But what to me it is, and a simpler way to explain it is, your brand is your reputation. It is your behavior. So those three things must be in alignment: brand, reputation, behavior. It is really just a promise of value. It's a little bit like I think Einstein says, and he says something like, "Be counted doesn't count," and it's an interesting kind of flip over of the fact that tangible things, very rational things, tend to be things that we count. Accountants can count them. They can count assets. They can put it on the balance sheet. They can depreciate it. But what is hard to count, and everybody says to me, so I'm going to do this branding exercise. What's the KPI? What's the return on investment? And it is very, very I kind of think about a great way to say this, and I do this a lot in workshops when I get branding teams together, when I'm working with large companies or small companies even. I say sort of, imagine you have to buy a car. So you can say, what would you choose your car based on? Would it be price, weight, fuel efficiency, engine size, torque, power, acceleration, right? All key things. But something really different happens when I say to you Mercedes, BMW, Jaguar, Aston Martin, to those names. They are not just a name. They are something that you feel. Maybe say, for instance, maybe it's not all good. Say, for instance, if you were driving along and you had a crash with a guy who drove a big, huge Mercedes, and he got out and he gave you, a very hard time. You probably maybe even have a negative impression about Mercedes. And interestingly enough, when you see action movies with Audi, and so when you come to choosing a car, I want to be in an action movie. I kind of want to have a muscle car or whatever, and you kind of connect those emotions to yourself, and that's what I mean. It's kind of like another analogy would be like, and again, I'm trying to step people into that zone of seeing emotions as more important than physical things. So Harley Davidson. Okay, I'm now approaching 60, so I'm that age where we feel kind of differently about life, right? And fulfill dreams, right? They fulfill dreams. Similarly, if you talk about a company like HSBC, what do they talk about? The world's most local bank. Yeah. What do you feel about that? You feel like, oh, well, they're global. They've got all this expertise, but they can deliver it to me in my neighborhood. They understand me. You know, they're not so big, but they're not so small. And those are feelings that we get from the way in which people or brands position themselves. And then, you know, boutique in KL. This is obviously before COVID, right? And it's a shop called Off-White. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand.
Yeah.
Okay, you are. Like, okay, you look like you could be, right? So I looked in the window, and there's this tote bag, and it looks exactly like an IKEA bag. I mean, it's yellow. It's got the straps. It's got little lighting on the straps. So I went inside and I said, so, you know, I know IKEA. And they said, $295.90. I said, okay. So that's actually, if you think about intangibles and you think about emotions, actually there is a kind of way in which you can measure it if you look at the price. You know, what are you prepared to pay for that feeling? I mean, you take a bag. A bag is a bag. You can use it anywhere you want. You put things in it, right? Like a car. Yeah. A car takes you to a place, right? You can get there, you know, in the same amount of time, whether you're driving a Toyota or you're driving a Lamborghini. Well, maybe, you know, it's a feeling that you have, and it says something about yourself. And, you know, corporations and companies, when you think about going forward, you have to think about what feeling do you engender in people when they buy your products and services, when they work with you. And that's kind of where emotional branding sits.
Wow, that's a thorough
explanation. Okay.
But I really love it. Like the one that you said, that how much are you willing to pay for that feeling, and maybe recommend then. Yeah, I think that's how the 90 cents bag and the quality, but it's just about how the brand somehow portray themselves outside in the market. So,
but it's also what it says to you, right? It also says something about you. Like, you carry that bag, right? So if you're carrying an IKEA bag, it says something about you. If you're carrying the Off-White version of the IKEA bag, it also says something about you. So it's self-reflection as well.
So I think definitely, like emotional branding, your personality as a user will be connected to the brand that you're using, right?
Thing that you use. And I mean, maybe, you know, there is kind of that balance between things. Of course, you know, maybe there are rational ways in which you choose things, but emotions drive a kind of higher purpose. And they also work on a very subliminal level. You know, I often say that, you know, conscious thought runs at about 20 bits per second, right? That's the things that are conscious in your mind. Like, you're looking at my face. You can see what's behind me. You know, you can hear my voice and you can hear my words. But there is also a whole lot every second, 8 million, right? And what's that? The temperature of the room that you're in, the feeling of the clothes that you're wearing. You know, your heart is pumping at a certain rate and doing all these things. Everything's happening around you. What you want to have for breakfast, what you want to have for dinner, what your partner shouted at you last night when he was very angry, right? All these things are going on in your head. And they are kind of almost automatic functions. So, you know, weigh that up. I kind of also use a little bit of a kind of thing when, especially in workshops, when I want to bury this into people's heads. I say, you know, if you think about Homer Simpson, you know Homer Simpson, right, from The Simpsons, right? You know what character he is. You know him? No?
No. I'm sorry.
Well, okay, so Homer is kind of like a character who kind of doesn't really want to do much. He's very lazy. So he says, if it's too hard to do, it's not worth doing. And if you put that
Yeah.
but they're not. Actually, what people are thinking about is sex, donuts, and sweet beer, right?
Oh. Right.
And how does that translate? I mean, if you think of it from the point of view of if you're going to a shopping centre, you're going to the supermarket. If you had to physically choose every single product that you wanted to put into your shopping basket, a shopping trip will take you 8 hours.
Yeah.
But the truth is that you've already made up your mind before you've even gone there. You know exactly what you want. So the last 3 feet of the wall is that when someone is standing in front of the shelf and they decide to pick this product or they pick that product, what will sway them? Because they've already made up their mind. They know what breakfast cereal they want. They know what hair shampoo they're going to use. They know what brand of toothpaste they love. They know which brand of toothpaste they don't love. And those kind of things are automatic. People have an automatic prerequisite that's in their heads. So when you're a new brand and you're launching a new brand, it's very, very hard to cut through all of that clutter. In rational sell. They could sell based on irrational differences. It's like, you can get this many more loads out of your washing, or it adds this particular flavour to smell to the clothing. These are all very functional benefits. But now consumers don't buy products.
Yeah.
What they do is they join them. Okay? They share them, they discuss them, they endorse them. So long in the tooth now because a lot of them paid to say what they say. But those ones that are very credible, you want to hear it from somebody else. You believe it because somebody else said it. Think about hotels. Right? Think about TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
When I look at a hotel, we're going to stay in a hotel. I don't look at their glossy websites anymore. I go to TripAdvisor and I look at the pictures taken by other people that have been there. Why? Because it's not being photoshopped. The facilities. What do they say about the location? What do they say about the way in which you're treated? All those things are more important. And again, it gives you the feeling of what the experience would be like. Again, just thinking about from how do brand owners sort of start to harness this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I think that I often say to them, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower? And it's quite interesting monochromatically, and I'm trying to get them to think in a very different way. An experience that I had, I mean, again, I kind of, I always was very afraid of going into these very, very high-end boutiques. And it was actually my partner. She loves all these brands, and she looks at them every day. It's to her, it's like a job, looking online and reviewing every one of their products. She knows everything, what their price point are, and everything like this. But say for instance, and one of her favorite brands is Burberry. So you go into these boutiques or into Louis Vuitton, and that's the feeling you get sometimes. But actually, when you meet these people and the way they greet you and the way you're treated, it's very quick to see why they're so successful. They really understand how to make people comfortable. They know how to make you feel positive about what they're selling. And for me, because I deal with a lot of luxury hotels, lots of kind of high end things. I wanted to know for myself. Okay, so when I purchase something high end, what does that feel like? So I work for Boss, and so I went into Hugo Boss, and you look at the shirts and you realise that so the step up here is G2000, $50. Hugo Boss, $500 for a shirt, and it's a lot to pay. But okay, so I went through that experience because I wanted to know how it felt, how they treat you, and what is somebody. Hugo Boss has been doing this for a long, long time. I mean, they've been around for decades. So, what is it about the experience of that high-end luxury brand that the 90 cents IKEA bag and the 90 cents off-white bag? It's the experience. It's the way you feel, not the way they feel. And so putting on a $500 shirt makes you feel very differently about yourself. Maybe it gives you more confidence. Maybe it's something, a little bit sort of gives you a bit of a sort of, an uplift. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of like where that is. And then I think when you think about rational versus emotional, that's kind of, again, an important difference that we have to consider as brand owners.
Yeah. Because I think brand tends to just go with the rational part rather than try to somehow infuse and merge in the emotional aspects. And what you said was so true, that it really relies on the brand experience. If I remember last time when I think it was like 8 years ago, 2012, when I was in New York, and I tried to just do window shopping thing because I have no budget to just buy things out there. So when I went there, and like you said, when you went to the Hugo Boss store, I went to a Bali store. So that Bali store was very, you just want to experience it. So when scary calmness that I never experienced, it feels very like a cool tense kind of thing. So when I enter in, I know that I'm not going to buy, right? But I just want to ask things out and blah 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 with I think 2012, I'm only I think 21 years old. So right there when I went there, and then all the I think customer service people there, and all are guys, like mostly. And when I see them, I was like, okay, how do I talk to this person so tall? And it makes me like there's a detachment directly, even though I know that whenever, like, let's say professional or maybe corporate people just jump in there, they will definitely just greet them all the way. But looking at this, I think little girl just wandering all the way in here and try to just be curious about stuff there. I think they have that somehow standing point of a brand. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really interesting
to an interesting thing that, say, for instance, when I was in New York last time, which was I think about a year and a half ago, I went to the Nike store, and they have like a 5-story building in Soho, and it's fabulous. I mean, and I think that a lot of people say that retail, the retail experience is in a recession kind of thing where everybody's shopping on. Is that the shopping gallery, their flagship store is so amazing, and you can't help but think highly positive things about their brand and how they kind of have so many things to look at, and maybe you're not there to buy, but what you're there to do is to be inculcated in this. You're there to absorb the kind of culture and get and build a kind of relationship with the brand. So and again, maybe talking about something like Burberry. The Burberry store is exactly the same. If you look at the online, and you walk into a store, it gives you that kind of sense of the feeling of the brand. And that's where I think, again, emotion plays a very, very important part.
Yeah.
I mean, again, thinking about, how things have changed, and it's not just, between, online and offline, but also thinking about what's been going on with COVID. It's changed a lot of things. I kind of think about what Darwin said about survival. He says it's not the strongest. He says it's not the most intelligent, but it's the most adaptive to change. So brand owners also have to adapt, and part of that adaptation must be, you think about changing your strategy, and your strategy should involve emotions. Another story, I love to do this story again in workshops, and it's kind of one. Okay, so in Star Wars, there's the Imperial. Okay, so that it's Darth Vader and the Imperial, right? So they invent the Death Star, and it's this big, huge thing that's going to blow up planets, right? So somehow the rebels get the plans, and then they destroy the Death Star. So that happened, I think, in Episode 4. And if you watch Rogue One, then you know how they got the plans, right? So it's hard work. It's not easy what they do, but they actually achieve something. So what's the response by the go there and they blow it up again? And I think there's a third iteration where they develop the Death Planet, and then of course the rebels blow that up. What's wrong there is that they are applying the same strategy, even though it doesn't yield any result. And this is the most important question that I ask brand owners to think about, is tell me why. Why do you exist? It sounds a very disarming question, very simple and fundamental thing, but it's not. Actually, maybe, if Darth Vader turned to his stormtroopers and said, why do we exist? Maybe we should go out and ask the universe what they want us to do. Maybe they would have a very different strategy to building Death Stars. But again, so let's return back to the question of why.
Yes.
Why do I exist? Why people choose me? Why am I can't ask a brand owner to do it for their brand unless I kind of understand it for myself. So why do I exist? What's my why positioning? Okay, so I see that I exist because brand owners need to find their voice. They need to reconnect with what is really authentic to them. And my role is to facilitate that, to help them to discover this. So in other words, for me, business only has two functions: innovation and marketing, and brand. So it's kind of like, if you think about this Me Too world where everybody has so many products and services. I mean, like say for instance, for us, in Singapore, I have something like 250 other competitors. That's quite normal, right? So in a global world, when you look at all the different people that there are doing everything, there is a lot of similarities. So when you ask yourself, why do you exist? When you ask yourself, what is it that I can provide? What can I do that's different? What do people really, really want? Actually, the first project I worked on with Andrew and Equus was they sent me out to Thailand, to Phuket, and I stayed at the Intercon Hotel where we were developing a value proposition to be launched in China. They were going to develop 100 spas. So they wanted to really have a clear idea of how to position the value proposition. So, a little bit like webinars, this is my first time going to a spa. I've never been to a spa before. I'm a guy. I was been around my 40s, and getting naked in front of somebody is kind of like, oh gosh, So I went through all of this, and I came to the term, actually I called it the spa virgin. I was the spa virgin. And what I learned from this is there's a huge opportunity for, business hotels to offer spa treatments. Why is it important out of this? Is I feel relaxed. I feel, when I went through the experience, they were very discreet. Everything felt like, I didn't feel like I was being examined under a microscope. I was kind of like, it was a great experience. And I thought, wow, why can't we tell other guys, businessmen like myself, that despite the fact that you think it might be a little bit of a harrowing experience, actually what you get out of it is you feel refreshed, you feel rejuvenated, and you feel ready to do business, right? Mm-hmm. You do your best when you are at ease with yourself. So kind of that gave me then the value proposition of how we should talk. So you can see how sometimes, if you go through the customer journey and you walk in their shoes, you can learn a lot from that. So for me, a key part of helping brand owners to develop their brand is this kind of consensual process where I get them to feel it. Mm. They have to feel their own brands. They have to walk in the shoes of their customers. And to me, that is the starting point of every brand. Okay?
Yeah. Wow. Right? About hotel and spa. Because if I need to pick and choose like spas wherever in Jakarta, and there's a lot. I mean, standalone spas or maybe hotel spas, but I always go to the hotel ones because that hotel has a standard procedure in doing their hospitality. So basically, I wouldn't pick something maybe that is standalone, but because of they are well trained and somehow, like you say, hotel are meant for you to rest, to pursue for their customers.
But as a woman, you wouldn't find that too. You wouldn't find that a difficult. There was no barriers for you, but I think also for middle-aged men, there might be a barrier. So therefore, if I'm able to lower the barrier by somehow being able to get across the feeling that this is this won't be a difficult experience, then maybe they'll trial. And in the case of any products and service, the difference between making people aware and then people trialing it is quite an important step. First people, if they have to know it exists, and like you say, you can send them a flyer, you can send them a complimentary treatment, you can send them all sorts of things that would induce them to try this out. But once they've tried it and got over that initial, okay, so that's what it's about, then you've got that. You may have them as a regular customer, and it can be a point of differentiation for a hotel that says that they offer the best spa possible. And I stayed at the Dusit with a number of my friends, and I'd heard that Dusit Hotel is like a fantastic spa. So of course I had to try that out, and we all went and tried it out. And it is wonderful, but is it the best? There's lots that are really, really good. But again, it's that kind of getting over the initial part that is important, and getting people to go, oh, I'm aware it's there, and then the next part is I'm going to try it and I'm going to use it. And then the last, maybe I'd talk a little bit about, kind of like a little bit more of a kind of process, a little bit of a kind of mechanism, right? When, so really what I'm saying here is, so when we do develop a brand, we have kind of a clear agenda in mind. And, everybody has a way of process, a system. I call it a plan on the page, because to me, strategy with a big S sometimes is hard for brand owners to understand. So this is strategy with a little s, which makes it a lot more accessible. Okay, I call it the 5 Ps, and the 5 Ps make up what I call the brand DNA. And just like you and I, the reason we're different is because of our DNA. So what's different about the business. If we say we answer the question why, okay, why we exist, that is actually one of the P's. So they are purpose, positioning, personality, promise, and platform. And the first one, let's start off with purpose. So purpose. The next thing to ask is, so who are you for? What is your target audience? You cannot be everything to everybody, because otherwise you'll be nothing to nobody. So what's really important here is that you understand who you are talking to. It will affect you right down to your channel strategy. You know, everything aligns to that. If you know what your target audience feel about you, or what they feel about what you have to offer, then you have a better chance of connecting your purpose with theirs. Right? Remember, they don't buy your products. You'd be amazed how many people don't do this. No, we had an example the other day where someone says, "Oh, we just want an e-brochure." Okay, we can do an e-brochure, but do you know anything about what everybody else is saying about the similar products? Do you understand your competitive landscape? Have you looked at what they're saying? Because if you don't understand what they're saying and how they talk about themselves, how can you truly be seen as an original brand, right? And everybody thinks in the first instance about the rational things, right? We're the biggest, we're the largest, we're the smallest, we're the cheapest. Then you've got an idea of what everybody is up to in the marketplace. You can develop those USPs, as you said. What is the USP? And the USP may not be just a rational thing.
Yeah.
Also think about, what do you know about the marketplace? What insights do you have? What changes are going to happen? Like, say, for instance, right now, what will happen after COVID? What will happen with the property market? You know, business. If everybody had to work from home and they can function at home, I'm thinking, why do I need an expensive office? Right?
Wow.
Is it going to be a permanent thing, or is it going to be a kind of, like we go back to as we were? Those things we don't know. Nobody knows about this stuff. After COVID, nobody knows. You talk to investment people, they don't know either. All right. So the third pillar is personality. So, so what do I mean by personality? I think about it almost like, could be like tone of voice. How do I talk to my customers? What language do I use? Am I a sophisticated brand? Am I a kind of dynamic brand? Am I kind of a smooth, silky kind of brand? Am I a kind of friendly, colloquial brand? Am I an Indonesian brand, or am I an international brand? All these kind of things. So, I mean, maybe for myself, okay, so I come up with 3 attributes. Okay, so 3 attributes usually for me are something that will be rational. I am gutsy, grounded, and curious, right? And that's what makes me who I am. And so when you say to a brand owner, so what is the personality of your brand? And you kind of get through all of the general metaphors that they use, because everybody says, we are innovative. Okay, well, don't say that, because everybody said it. We're trustworthy. Again, don't use it. Everybody uses it, right? So we have to kind of develop what it is that these 3 things are. And these things are really interesting because they can actually affect the behavior. Remember, brand equals behavior equals reputation, right? So what are the behaviors of people? If you say, for instance, we are a very dynamic brand, but then you... it's like, computer says no, you kind of have, it's a disconnect, isn't it? So, having these kind of things, it means that you have to live these values, right? You have to live these attributes. That's kind of like a personality. When you think about the promise, so that's the 4th one, promise. Promise is really, as we said, brand is a promise of future value. I kind of widen this out to say, so what is my story? What is the narrative that I'm going to tell people? What is my mantra? Compelling truth. So it's an interesting thing, compelling and true. It must be compelling, exciting, but it also must be absolutely true. I must be able to deliver on it unequivocally every single time.
Yep.
Right? Without reservation. So, like you say, Bali, you walked in there and it made you feel uncomfortable. Then they didn't deliver on their brand promise, right? So, or maybe their brand promise is, we like to make young Indonesian girls, when they come to New York, feel very uncomfortable. Then they did fulfill their promise.
Yeah.
But I doubt it, right? Okay, so here's an example of a brand promise or a compelling truth. Think about Federal Express. You know who they are, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So their brand promise is, we live to deliver. And how do they personify that? It's in their technology. It's their know-how. It's how they track parcels. You know that they can be trusted. It's like you get the sense that, a little bit like in the Way Out West, doesn't know what's going to happen if they're going to be attacked by Indians and, aliens or whatever. They're still going to deliver their package. So the last one there is the platform. So the last P is the platform. This is, to me, is about the go-to-market strategy. How you're going to, reach out to your chosen few, right? You're not for everybody. You're for your chosen few. What is the channel of engagement? So if they say, for instance, and we did this with some cosmetic products. So, as a 58-year-old man, it's very hard to put myself in their shoes. So I actually sat down with a group of them and, talked to them about the products and see what they feel about it. Show them the packaging, show them packaging ideas, show them different kind of configurations, show them colours, textures, the feel for the communications. And automatically then you get an idea. And I'd say, for instance, I said to them, so what magazines do you read? Crickets. They don't read magazines, right?
No.
Everything's through, YouTube. They watch all of these, beauty, podcast and talking about, what products to use and here's a trial, this one. So of course, it opens my understand how all of that fits together. But again, a lot of clients, a lot of, brand owners think that they are the decision maker. Oh, I own the business, therefore I will decide what colours, textures, what logo, what packaging shape, and they're not the target audience. And that is a big failure. So platform is really actually the last step. If you know what your purpose is, if you know your positioning, if you understand the personality and what it is you're going to promise, that then becomes a step that brings things in like design, brings in things like point of purchase, brings in things like the visual and verbal representation of. So, and then, some brands I love to talk about when I talk about this is, say, for instance, you take Amex. Amex has the best recovery record in the financial industry. It doesn't matter how many times I cut out my card.
Yeah.
They have a way of getting me back on board. And then, this article recently, a kind of interesting one about Apple. So I don't know if you know it, but, when you look at product placement and you think about all the products you see in movies, there's never, ever a bad guy who's holding an Apple phone.
True. Yeah.
Right? Why?
Yeah.
Because they've consciously thought about that. Bad guys don't use Apple phones. Only the good guys do. Because they want you to feel that you're the good guy and you should have the Apple phone. Let's see that one coming. Yeah. But that's, again, the article is very interesting. It was kind of a bit of an eye-opener to how people kind of see these things. So the other, a next kind of question that people will always ask, and you say, so here's 5 Ps. How do you kind of activate this? It's not kind of like a simple thing to do. Mechanism involves that, so how do you find out, like the positioning? You really should audit yourself. You should look at the whole experience. Remember, walking in the customer's shoes. I've done things like secret shopper, like say, for instance, we were working with a property developer who had many, many properties and they had lots of showrooms. So what I did, or my job was, is I went to every single one of them and pretended to be a customer, and just to see how their staff and how the whole process works. Everything down to how was I greeted? Was I offered a drink? When did they give me the brochure? What was the kind of process and system that allowed me to find out information? How did they make me feel? Did they make me feel that, busy right now, blah, blah, blah. And then even down to how many people follow through after I've made an appearance. And the amazing thing was this developer has probably about 10 or 20 of these kind of development sites. And out of all of them, I only got one salesperson called me back.
Wow.
Amazing. Okay. So, this is information that's really good for the brand owner to say, okay, so what should the showroom experience be like? And what are my people doing, when I'm not there, and how does that kind of like we do the walkthrough. We need to, and you can do that yourself as a brand owner. I don't know if you know that show called The Secret Boss, I think it's called, or something like that. Is that what it's called, Rosie? See, the Boss movie. What's the name? They go undercover. Undercover Boss. Yeah, Undercover
Wow,
Boss.
I want to watch that.
Okay, that one is really good because they have people who go into their own companies. They wear a disguise. They have a persona. They don't, they experience what is it like to be an employee within their own company. And there's a lot of simple truths that come out of it. Some of them discover some things that are very positive. Some of them discover some horrific things. But that kind of understanding from the inside out is really important. Okay, so I mentioned about we should review competitors, and that comes down to simply like, so what do they say? What do they put on their website? What do they, and for me, because I'm the wordsmith, I have to look at, the language. And I literally do this. I take, say I've got 15 or 20 competitors. I look at their websites. I look at all the leverage language that they use. I take out all those keywords and I put them on a page. And I look at which ones are used more often than others. And I say, this is what we're not going to say. This is what we will not use this vernacular at all. We have to find other ways to talk about ourselves. And it's really interesting. It really changes the way in which the key elements of a website would be built, because no longer are you using similar phrasing, similar words, similar kind. We interview the brand owners, we interview their customers, we interview their partners, we interview other people that have a stake in that business. And depending on what it is, if it's a utilities business, you kind of had to interview people from operations, you have to interview people from their merchant networks, you have to interview people from, their customer base. But, if it's, say, for instance, an airline, right, who would you talk to? You have to talk to the people who deliver the service. You have to talk to the pilots, talk to the people who are the on-ground staff. So it really depends on the type of company you're working for, and then what are you going to do with that? Think about that as helping you to develop your own vocabulary that you will then use in messaging. Wow. So for me, also an important part of this is it's not just about the brand consultant coming up with some clever ideas. It's actually, again, remember, it's about feelings. I want the brand owner to feel it. I want them to be excited about it. I want them to be invested in building their own brand, because long after I've gone, they've got to kind of keep the momentum going. And this is not cheap. I mean, it costs money. Everything you do, if you make a change in a process, if you change if you're going to retrain staff, if you're going to change a logo, all that stuff costs money. Developing the key messages then become kind of core elements of like the functional elements of that. And then, think about now how, again, when I was young, it was only three things that people did. It was TV, press and radio, right? TV, press and radio. Now, we have such a huge new media, a suite to choose from. But I was really interested to find out. I looked into the facts of, so what is the best channel to use? I mean, again, it depends on the target audience, but, in a general context, 61% of people get their information is broadcast TV. Something like 9% is actually from gaming. So I'm an avid gamer, so I kind of know that one. And 8% is from radio, and 6% is from print. So where do I spend my money? Definitely, 61% of people are, the media that they are looking at is an online media. So it automatically says to brand owners where they could be spending their money. But that's not to debunk all of the others, because it really does depend on the kind of business you're in and the kind of target audience. So, the truth of that is, and if I think about, say, for instance, the old adage if you're in the real estate business was location, location, location. Yeah. So in the case of emotional branding, it's differentiate. Remember we were saying about how you have to find the why. The why itself is some. How can you expect everybody else to be to believe that it's true? We recently did a project for a very large property development company in Malaysia. They're called Sime Darby Properties, and they kind of, their parent company is in palm oil, and they have a lot of land. So this land, what they're trying to convert it is from low yield kind of farming agricultural products into property development. So building townships, building industrial real estate, building integrated, largest landowner in Malaysia. So when we started to talk to them about what it is that they do, the first thing I said to them is, you're no longer in the property business. Wow. You're now in the sustainability business. Mm-hmm. Sustainability means that I have land. I don't just use it as and when I want. I look at how it's going to impact my country, my people, my communities. If I'm building townships, am I thinking about it as a longevity? Do these people have jobs to go to? Are they serviced by quality infrastructure and all of these kind of things? So the CEO of a property development company, you're not in property, you're in sustainability. But that change in vernacular means that they think about their whole value proposition in a very different way. So, that's kind of like one kind of way to look at it. Another example that happened to be very recently is that we were talking to a sovereign wealth fund. Mm-hmm. So the sovereign wealth fund is kind of very, very disconnected. If you're in the industry, you know exactly who they are, and they're really good. But for the normal mummers and papas, they don't understand what it is they do. And if you read their website, it's horrifically oblique and opaque. Mm-hmm. So they asked us to kind of do an initial recommendation if you're a potential employee to join a company, and what do other people say about them? So it's really kind of interesting because the way you handle one thing is the way you handle many things. So how you handle recruitment and what people think on the inside can really give somebody an insight to that. And in this site, they compared this. We were able to compare the CEO approval ratings. So the company whose CEO has a rating of 92. So you see the difference, right?
Yes.
So I noticed the time. We're about 2 minutes to go, so I better do a quick kind of wrap up and a kind of. I had some other things I wanted to say, but I'll have to save it for another day. Yeah. Okay. So So my closing thoughts on this. I kind of use a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He says, "You can fool all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." So, what I'm saying here, in a connected world, really, if you're a brand owner, really think about what is compelling and true. And there's a huge opportunity for Indonesian companies. These people will feel uncomfortable. But it's when you are uncomfortable is actually when you develop and learn. So just like me today, I was very uncomfortable doing the webinar. I've never done one before. But again, it helps me learn and grow. And that's the same for brands.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah.
So hopefully, I haven't bored everybody to death. But maybe